what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
Welcome to I Guess I'll Do It with Pat House. I am Pat House, and on this podcast I will talk to mostly comedians, but probably some musicians and other creative people as well about their early influences, what got them to where they are today, and when they had their I Guess I'll Do It moment where they decided to dive into their creative endeavor. So thank you for listening, and here we go. All right, welcome to I Guess I'll Do It with Pat House. On this episode, I have my buddy, you can check him out on Sirius XM Radio, and he's been on Letterman numerous times, Big Hand from Mike Somerville.
Woo! I'm clapping for myself. Is
that was
okay?
the first time I clapped. I don't know where that came from. I decided to treat this one like a club, so I clapped for you there.
Oh, the good old days. I remember that.
You deserve all the claps because you did a live show last night, right?
Yes, man. My first one in almost 7 months. Gosh.
Jesus.
Yeah. It was weird. It was like, they say it's like riding a bike, but I haven't done that in 10 years, so I don't know. It was. But it comes rushing back, man. All those weird feelings about before you're going on stage, I had, plus like not even knowing if I knew how to do it. It was odd.
Did it go well?
It did, but I think like everyone was very understanding. It was one of those outdoor shows that we're all doing these days, and like the audience was just thrilled to be out, have somewhere to go. I had cheat notes on stage, and I tried not to like be too obvious with them, but I was trying to do new stuff too, rather than just go back to the old act and be like, okay. I was like, well, let me try to do new material. So I threw a lot at me, and I think it went well given the circumstances. I don't think it would have gotten me back on Letterman.
Yeah, I did the same thing, man. I came out doing brand new stuff because, I thought I would have been a little wonky with the old stuff because I was working on longer pieces before all this started.
Right.
And I didn't want to like come out into storytelling. So I just riffed on like just everything going down, like just the current situation and everything. And it seemed to do pretty well. And I had a couple new ideas and I rolled into that. And I was like, holy shit, well, I guess I'm rolling with new material for a while. And it felt good.
That's awesome, man. See, well, and that was my feeling. Like, how do you get up after this year, after everything, and then not like acknowledge it or mention it? I can't go back to laundry. Is crazy, right? What is the deal with socks? I mean, it's just, I think you have to. Even though I talk about fluff in my act, I think you got to talk about a little bit of what's going on.
Oh, absolutely. So, let's backtrack for a second here. So. We've been buddies for a long time, but we rarely cross paths, as that's how it works in comedy. But my very first hosting weekend at a club, you were the feature act. That was at Rascals Comedy Club in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and Big Jay Okerson was the headliner. And was that your first feature week on the road as well?
Oh, man, I don't remember. Do you know what year it was?
Oh, man. Had to have been either 06 or 07.
Okay, no, definitely
06. I want to say 06 because it was before I hosted at Helium, and I hosted there in 07. So
wow, good gosh, man, you have a really good memory. I can't remember last week.
Comedy autism.
Yeah, it works, but that was probably not my first, but probably amongst it. When I first started getting feature work and doing the road, it was probably around 2005 or so. And that I remember the weekend. Well, I remember that club on that highway, right? Just on like some weird highway in a hotel.
It was in the Crown Plaza. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I remember that because it was my first hosting weekend, and the first show I was given such bad advice, and I fucking bombed. I bombed so bad, and that's the show I had all the friends and family members at. And then I was like, fuck that. I just want to do what I want to do. And then the Friday late show and both Saturday shows were so much better because I didn't do all that dumb bullshit I was told to do on the first show. So that's why I remember it. And then you and Okerson, like it's all very clear in my mind. So
that's just, who was the advice and who gave it to you?
I won't say who gave it to me. I don't even think he does stand up anymore.
I think
he's long gone. No. They were like, just do a lot of crowd work. And I don't want to fucking talk to these people. I never did crowd work before. So, I only have 10 or 12 minutes of jokes. And that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
But they're like, ask people where they're from if they're celebrating anything. And I do. And I'm dying.
Oh,
and I remember my college roommate was in the front row. So I started doing crowd work with him, and I go, "Where do you live?" And he goes, "Philly." And I go, "Where at?" He goes, "Parktown Apartments." I go, "Oh, no shit, me too." I go, where do you live?" He goes, 1811 West. I go, "Oh, no shit, it's my roommate, everybody." And that was the only laugh I got. And then on the Late Show, I was like, fuck this. I'm not doing any crowd work. I did my act, and it was fine.
It was great. Yeah, it's just, isn't that so funny when we're first starting out? All the questions and all the advice and all the everything, and it's just go with your gut is usually the best.
It's so funny how some clubs, like when you do host, are like, all right, ask about birthdays, anniversaries, if anybody's celebrating anything. Let's get these people all involved. And other clubs are like, we will never have you again if you talk to the crowd. I'm like, yes, I love you.
Or even worse, you ever had the ones where they come up and give you, like, there's a birthday in the audience, and they're good people or they're friends of us, will you please riff them, or will you give them a hard time? Like, what? No, just leave me alone.
They're like, it's Kelly's birthday. Well, I hope it's her last birthday.
And what a show, by the way. I'm up there. You get up there with your brand, and then I got up there and probably talked about laundry and men and women being different. and then Jay Okerson gets up and does his thing. That's a heck of a range.
Yeah, that is quite the gamut of different styles of comedy there. So you started a little bit ahead of me. I started in October 2004. I'll be 16 years next month. When did you do your first set?
Well, my first set ever was way back in college. But it's one of those things it's hard to count. It was a freshman in college back in the 90s, and you go, oh, that was technically my first show. But I started in 1999. After I'd gotten out of school, I had a job for a couple years in advertising in New York City. But yeah, to take you from the beginning if you want, I was a freshman in college, out in University of Notre Dame out in Indiana.
I heard of that.
Middle of nowhere school. And we had a professional coming to campus. Her name was Bertice Berry, a professional comedian coming down and from Chicago. And they wanted students to open. So all my friends were like, "You're funny, you should do it." And I always loved stand-up, always loved watching it growing up. The Rascals Comedy Hour. Rascals had a comedy hour on TV3 in New Jersey, and my buddy and I, as like teenagers, used to watch it on Friday nights. And never considered doing comedy, but here we are. Buddies are going, "You're funny, you should do it." Put together a bunch of notes about just dorm living and cafeteria food, and I did 8 or 10 minutes, and It went great. Yeah, I know. And look back on it, I just wrote a bunch. I know. I wrote a bunch of stuff I thought was funny and had no sense for time. At the end, you're just like, here's all the things I think are funny. All my friends from college came, sat out, laughed, cheered. So it was a very supportive audience. No clue if I was really that funny. But I do remember afterwards, Bertice came up and said, the professional, she said, I said, "Oh, I can't wait to see you. Good luck and everything." And she said, No, good luck to you. And she kind of said, that was really pretty good. And I was like,
wow.
I know, my first show ever, but then that was it. Like for Notre Dame, like for my next 4 years, I didn't become a comedian. Like whenever there was a chance to jump on a microphone or host an MC a whatever, like an event, they would say, "Hey, Somerville, you should do it." But that was it. Graduated college, moved to New York, got a job in advertising. And my whole life growing up in the suburbs of Jersey, I just thought there was like 3 jobs in the world, like you'd be a cop or a lawyer or
Springsteen.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I couldn't play music. But yeah, all of a sudden I got to New York City, and you see this whole world of other things you can do. There's all different industries. There's and then sure enough, there's all these comedy clubs. And so I started poking around, checking them out, doing open mics. And I did a funniest person in advertising contest at the Stand-Up New York Club on the Upper West Side. Didn't win it. But then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna quit my job and be a comedian. And so that was 1999. That's kind of when I officially consider myself having started. But is that how do you measure? Do you when you say how long people have been doing it? I never know what date to start from.
Well, for me personally, I did my very first set, and then I just didn't stop.
Nice.
I never took a break. I did my first set on a Wednesday, and I'm not even bullshitting you. I probably went to the Laugh House 34 of the next 35 Wednesdays. I missed one. Yeah.
Good for you.
COVID. I mean, I've gone on vacations and stuff where I didn't do stand up for 2 or 3 weeks because I was going to Ireland for 2 weeks or this or that. But Yeah, the longest break I ever had was COVID, which I'm sure is the
Wow.
same for basically everybody at this point.
I think so. Yeah, I think
Even
it's
people
definitely
that do it on a fucking regular part-time basis are still doing sets every couple months, you know?
exactly. Yeah, it always amazes me once in a while. I'd meet like a comic who'd be like, "I'm just gonna take like a year off," and you're like, "Well, you're not a comic then."
Well,
It's
well,
just
bye.
yeah, it's gonna take some time. But yeah, but I asked the question because when I first started, I would remember when people said, "How long have you been doing it?" And you'd be on the road, and some just like, kind of like, no disrespect, but hacky sort of road guy would be like, 36 years. I've been doing this 36 years. And then I'd watch his act and be like, you should lie. You should not. You should.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
should say 7 years. But yeah, that's I'm always like, yeah, I don't know where you measure from, when you got serious or when you really first stepped on stage. But
I mean, yeah, you're right. There is a way to break down the question. I consider it like this podcast. I'm just asking about comics' first time on stage, but then you could be like, when was your first paid gig, or when did the
right,
when did the
right.
club start using you? Like when did you get swept in to where you felt like a real comic because you were getting paid regular gigs? You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, that hasn't happened for me yet, but yeah.
Oh, that's not true, because if I remember correctly, right before coronavirus, you and I were in Vegas the exact same week,
Yes,
and
yes.
boy, did we have some fun.
Holy cow, can you believe that was this year? That was this calendar year, 2020.
Dude, that was Super Bowl weekend.
Oh,
I was at Kimmel's club. You were at Brad Garrett's,
yep,
and
yep.
little did we know that 3 weeks after that, we'd all be on lockdown.
Unbelievable, and an amazing week. I mean, you were at a great club, doing great shows, and I was up at the MGM having a great time. You got to hang with Regan, right? Brian Regan.
Yeah, man, I still think about that pretty often. I mean,
I,
that was
I still
kind
think
of
about
surreal.
it.
And I'm bummed that the first night we were hanging out, I was just a tad bit drunker than I wish I
Yeah.
was, considering I was hanging out with Brian Regan.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those things you look back, but you always do that. You look back, oh, I wish this, or I wish that. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's whatever. That was a fun week, and I had done, my girlfriend and I had done the dry January. We hadn't drank at all, and I remember you like texting me like, "Hey man, we're gonna be in Vegas at the same time." And I remember looking at the calendar, being like, "That ends. Dry January ends." It was like whatever, the Wednesday or the Thursday, like at midnight technically. And then I'm like, well, New York time, which means 9 p.m. Vegas time. Like I was just because I wanted to honor it. And I didn't want to like lie, to my girlfriend and say I fell off of it. But yeah, we had a good time.
oh man, that was a lot of fun. So
yeah,
so what were so I do want to ask about. Okay, I'll do your first set first. You did 8 to 10 your first time on stage.
yeah.
That's like unheard of.
Well, except I didn't know any better at the time.
Exactly.
Yeah, you sit down and you're like, I was probably, I mean, I wish I had a tape of it. I was probably, ever see like a corporate guy get up and think he's funny and talks for 19 minutes? I mean, it's probably what I was doing. But yeah, I probably didn't understand tightness and set up punch. But I was, like I said, I just sat down and just wrote a bunch of stuff that I thought was funny. And I actually I've found that to be, when I early in my career, I don't know if the same for you, like actually writing material was easier because you had everything to draw on. You hadn't written yet, so you had your family, your life, your childhood, your friendships, and so I wasn't good at writing material, I'm sure, but at the same time, the world was I had everything to pick from.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that was yeah. So I did about 8 to 10. I think it was 8 to 10. But yeah, that and no clue if I ran a light, if I did. I mean, wouldn't have meant anything to me anyway. If someone,
Yeah, you wouldn't have even known what a light was. I feel like the only people that like do 8 to 10 their first time are the ones who get on at a club as a first timer and they don't even know the light exists, so they just keep talking until the club has to turn the lights and or mic off.
Turn it off.
Oh, dude, Helium in Philly. Well, I want to say I guess does that. There hasn't been open mics in a while, obviously, but yeah, Helium would do that, man. If you went over your time, I think they gave you like a 30 or 40-second leeway, and then they would kill the lights and the sound.
Is that right?
And it never gets old. It is awesome.
I love it. It must be fun to watch. Yeah.
Oh, dude, the comics, we all love it every time.
Oh God.
Do you remember any jokes from your first set?
Yeah, I did something about the cafeteria food. Like
of course.
Yeah,
Yep.
and then like I don't remember the exact joke, but it was like it was Mystery Mondays and something Tuesdays, and then Friday was like the weekend review, like green soggy vegetables and the weekend review. Like I was just going over the menu, and people were roaring, and I was this is easy.
Yeah, I remember I went to Temple University, and like when I was a freshman and sophomore there, they may not have Temple football may have not even won a game until like my junior or senior year. So I made a joke about how they could lose to DeVry, and like it crushed. Looking back now, it's so easy, but at the time, if I did like a set on campus, that shit would murder.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was safe to do because nobody on the football team was coming to my shows.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it sounds like they couldn't have tackled you anyway. So.
Absolutely.
But it is know your audience, right? I talked about what I knew, everyone related because they were all students. And also the novelty, like looking back, it was kind of a safe house, it was your friends, it was on the campus where you go to school. It could not have been more supportive in terms of people wanting it to go well, just wasn't like a club of angry business people.
Oh, wow. Well, weren't you welcomed with a nice cushion?
Yeah. Now, that said, and I don't want to throw off the whatever questions you have planned for me, my first show in New York City, that was a whole different situation. Well, my first real show in New York, because I did the funniest person in advertising contest, as I told you, and that also went very well because everyone who I worked with at the agency came and roared and cheered. It was a night out. We're all 22 years old in New York City, so that went great, and it went well enough that the club asked me to come back. They said they thought we were really good. Come do this 6:30 p.m. show on Tuesday. I'm like, I'm done. I'm on my way. This is next stop, Madison Square Garden. And I went back Tuesday, 6:30, where nobody knew me. It was just like an early weird show. A couple of like business people who were just visiting town. And man, bomb is not the word. You're sweating and speeding up, and you're doing and I'm trying to do like my college jokes basically. I'm like, what's to do with dorms, and everyone's like, what are you talking about? We're in New York City, and it was literally night and day.
That's so fun. I feel like that's relatively common because I kind of had a similar situation. My first and second set went very well. And it's weird how you get this chip on your shoulder by doing something twice. My first and second sets went well. And then I swear to God, sets like 3 through 10, I got my ass handed to me. Like I bombed for the next month and a half.
Yeah. Were you trying to like recreate those first and second sets, or do you have any idea why?
I think a little bit of both, and I was throwing new stuff in there. I think I was trying to learn too much or do too much. You know what I mean? Like I think my brain kind of got jumbled, and then I kind of had to stop back and think of like, okay, this joke hasn't worked one time. Let's just drop it.
Right.
This has potential. So I think I was kind of just all over the place, but the first set or two is exciting, and then the third set, like reality hit.
Yeah,
hard.
Yeah. It's true. Well, you're right, and you probably start thinking too much or thinking stuff. A million thoughts go through your head. And I remember being there, and I think it was Judy Gold, the comedian, who told me, do 100 shows, and all your questions will answer themselves. And I really always valued that because I was like. Because early on, if you see a bigger name, a headline or whatever at the club, and you want to ask them a million questions and get advice and insights, and I remember that just go do 100 shows. Don't ask any more questions. Go do 100 shows and then see what questions you have left. And I always adopted that. I started counting shows, and then I also started doing hours on stage. When I was first starting, I said, all right, I'm going to do 100 hours on stage. And when you think about it, that's crazy. You're doing 6 minutes. All right, that's 6 minutes. And then you had a 10-minute set. Okay, we got 16 minutes towards that 100 hours. But I remember that really helped me because I had I had like a homework mind. I was a school guy who liked to study and take the test and get a good grade. And all of a sudden I was in this world of comedy where it wasn't like that. It was anything goes. There's no rules. There's no promotions. There's no end of the semester. And so it really helped me to focus on myself and go, okay, you worry about getting 100 hours on stage. And that became my focus. And sure enough, when I looked up and I had it, I was a better comic, and all the stuff I worried about, I realized wasn't important.
That's crazy. I've never heard that angle of advice. I didn't know you were so like Goodwill Hunting about it. But that's definitely a unique approach. I think it was Jay Leno who said like you're not a comic till you've done 500 or 1,000 sets or something.
Is that right?
Or no. Sorry, you're not a comic. You don't know what you're doing until you've done 1,000 sets.
I love it.
I think he said, and I totally believe that as well.
Yeah.
But wow, okay, so you brought that's like the Outliers, Malcolm Gladwell.
The 10,000 hours, right?
Yep, 10,000 hours.
Yeah.
The Beatles he mentions and Bill Gates and stuff.
Exactly. And I did read that book. This was, that was after the fact, but I was like, yeah, that is it. That, and I still to this day count shows. I count every show I do. I used to aim for 300 a year. And then it became 200 or 250 a year, and then obviously this year it's been 6. But
yes,
but yeah, it helps me look past some of the stuff that we all stress and worry about. You're like, okay, I know if I'm on stage 250 times in a calendar year that I did something right.
Absolutely.
Do
you know how many sets you've done total?
It's about 5,000.
Wow. Okay, I'd probably ballpark myself there around as well because I used to keep track as well. You're the only other person I know who used to keep or who does keep track. I used to, and I was like a senior in college or maybe the year after, my computer totally died. And when it died, I was probably around 2,500.
Okay.
But that's when I was doing open mics left and right and left and right and left and right. And then once I started to get some more paid gigs, I did less gigs, but they were better. So
there you go.
I wasn't putting up record numbers, but the shows were better. But yeah, you're the only other person I know who used to keep track as well.
Yeah, and I don't know my exact number because I didn't keep track right out of the gates. And then when I really started keeping track, like I said, I did minutes on stage versus shows. But then I said, you know what, getting on stage that's it. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. Whether it's a 5-minute set or an hour set. And they're each have their own challenges. So I just started counting shows because the minute thing became, after enough experience, it wasn't that important. But to your point, the better shows too. You realize you're going on the road and you're headlining, 7 shows. You're like, okay, well that you learned a lot that weekend versus doing 10-minute local spots. But
absolutely, man. If you have like the next 2 or 3 weekends booked in a row, whether you're hosting or featuring or whatever, you don't have to do those 2 mics on Sunday.
Exactly.
Especially the ones that are like shitty. You're like, man, I don't feel like.
Yeah.
Like this mic blows, this mic blows. I'll go if I have to. But I have shows the next 2 weekends. Like, I'm good. Maybe I can just enjoy those nights at home like a normal person.
Right. I mean, imagine that. Once I started doing that, that was eye-opening to me. Like to say you can take a night off because I'd never taken a night off, and I would meet some comics who would, they weren't being lazy. They were getting up 5-6 nights a week, but they always said, no, I need that one night that I know is mine, and I never had that. That and vacation, I never felt like I could do. I was like, no, you can't. You never know where your next job's coming from. You can't voluntarily not work. But yeah, once I started, setting a little time aside for myself, just going up that night, I'm just not going to put in for avails, even though I have nothing else. It definitely helped me mentally. I still haven't taken a vacation though.
Speaking, that's also. All right, so speaking of that, so me and you and Jay were together at Rascals my first hosting weekend.
Right.
And I was still going to Temple, and Jay told me I was funny, but he's like, man, when you get out of college and you get like real life experience, you're going to become so much better because the world's going to open up.
Right.
And I still think of that as well because he was totally right about that angle as well. Like, your material's going to get better and all that shit.
Don't you hate advice like that though? Because you want to be there. You want to already be like, no, you got it, And it's like you're going to be good. It's like, no, I want to be good.
But like I'm there. I'm right there with you. You have 45 minutes of polished material. I have like 8 minutes on Applebee's, and I think we're fucking equivalent.
Exactly.
So you said you watched Rascals Comedy Hour. That's pretty awesome. I remember like Premium Blend and like VH1 had Comedy Spotlight. Who were some comics you were into before you even started, or even who were comics you were into when you were a kid?
I mean, Bobby Collins he was on all the time on the Rascals Comedy Hour, and I was just blown away. I thought he was the funniest guy on the planet. I just couldn't believe that people would get up and stand up, and he was But I'll answer going all the way back to a kid. It was really Rodney Dangerfield. I mean, I had 2 older brothers, so I felt like I saw and heard, comedy and things like Letterman was on the TV, and Cosby or Pryor albums would be, I heard stuff. But I remember my first album being Rodney Dangerfield, and just being like blown away, going, this guy is so many jokes per minute, so funny, so silly and light. And it wasn't until I became a comedian that I realized what a genius he was.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, because you think he's just being a silly guy with his tie saying no respect. And then you're like, holy cow, that dude's a craftsman. I mean,
oh my God, a complete craftsman. And it's also like, now comedy isn't so much set up punch anymore the way he did it.
Right.
But he was like machine gun, rapid fire, bam, 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 punchline, and then tag, 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 tag.
Exactly.
And I mean, we all have tags on our jokes, but he was almost to like the syllable. Like he was an absolute wordsmith, the same way like Carlin was, or Pryor, like a wordsmith, but in just a much more succinct way.
Exactly. That's exactly. And you realize, yet he created a world. You know, one thing for doing so many jokes so quickly, so many punchlines, you could get very just like, it's, one dimensional and very hot, but you felt like you knew the person and the character. And as you say, I mean, with wording and economy of words and an absolute craftsman. And it sounds a little crazy when I tell people this, but I kind of not modeled, but I think it was my influence in terms of not my style. Obviously, if you watch my act, you wouldn't say it's a Rodney Dangerfield act, but that jokes per minute, that get to it, set it up, create the world, make it personal. So it's not just saying knock knock who's there, but also get to punchlines. And I think, I mean that's sort of kind of what I pursued when I started.
That's, and I knowing like your act, I can see how you were influenced by that.
Yeah.
Did you ever work Dangerfields in New York?
Yeah.
I have had they were very nice to me. Like I only worked the club very briefly for like 2 or 3 months. They would give me a spot like every Monday or every other Monday. Probably did like 10 or 12 sets there, and I think like 2 of them went well.
Yeah.
I remember just being there on a Monday night, and like most of the crowd was not even from the U.S.
Yeah.
And that was the night my friend Adrian Appalucci and Pete Kemple came with me. And we're all comics, so we ball bust and torture each other. And they were in their glory because they just watched me flounder for 15 minutes.
Is there anything better than watching another comic fail? I mean, it's
just watching your friends suffer. It's also, but at the same token, yeah, it's entertaining because we've all been there and we understand.
Exactly.
But at the same time, it's also like it's like when you talk to your friends who are on the road. Like, I know my friends are funny. They're on the road. So if I talk to a comic who's like, oh, man, the Saturday Late Show sucked. Okay, that's the only show I want to hear about. The other ones went well because you're funny, but I want to hear about why it didn't go well.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's not malicious. It's like you say, it's just we've all been there. It's that dark place where you just kind of – but I think also, like you say, that's, what did go wrong in case I ever encounter that? What could have been saved? Because you learn more from the bad ones than the good ones.
Oh, that is totally, totally true.
Yeah. But Dangerfields, I have similar experiences. I wasn't like on their roster getting like, A spots on a Saturday night. It was always like an odd night or an odd show. And yeah, I mean, it just, that room, boy, when it gets rolling, I had maybe 1 or 2 good spots there. And that's a fun room when it's going. But when it's not, man, oh man, you feel the ghosts on the wall staring at you.
Back sweat immediately.
Yes. Yeah, but I liked being there because of Rodney. Like, just I never met him, unfortunately, but I always just liked feeling like, this is the guy. This is the guy to blame for me getting into this business.
So I know he's from Philly. Dom Herrera is from Philly. I know him well because we go way back. He started forever before me, but Dangerfield gave Dom his start. So it's kind of cool to have a friend who was firsthand friends with Rodney, because Dom always has stories, and I never get tired of hearing of them. It's just just so cool to hear that kind of stuff. And
Dom should write a book or something. That guy he's the history of comedy. He knows everyone. He's worked with everyone.
Oh God, yeah. He's great. I see him pretty much every Thanksgiving. So hopefully
he comes back, right?
Yeah, he does helium in Philly every.
I got a great Dom story. Do you have time for it?
Oh God, yes.
Oh my God. So I love Dom so much. Again, growing up, you see him, you're like, oh my God. And then finally got a chance to work with him for the very first time in Wildwood, New Jersey, down at the Casbah Comedy Club.
Yep.
Yeah, amazing old, classic club. I think every Labor Day he comes back and does it. And it dates all the way back from the time, I think, when when the Don, who runs the club, was having, some tough times at the club, and Dom would come in and, pack the place, sell it out all weekend. So anyway, I go and I work with him, and I'm just having a great time. Just, so excited to work with him. We're chatting about the Beatles, anything he wants to talk about.
It's always Beatles every time.
Every time, yeah. It was great. We have this amazing weekend. This whole thing. I'm just feeling so good. I'm like, I'm not gonna like overstay, but I feel like I know the guy now, and this and that. And cut to, it's got to be a year or two later. Brad Garrett opens his club in Vegas, and have a great time. I'm at the grand opening. Dom's at the grand opening. Introduce hey, Dom, my guy. He goes, oh yeah, I remember, of course, this and that. So I feel like, hey, he remembers me. I introduced my brother to him. Anyway, a couple of years later, we're back in Vegas. I'm working the club. It's Super Bowl week. Dom's working the club starting Super Bowl Monday. He comes in on the Sunday to watch the Super Bowl at those VIP private parties. We're at the party. I'm so psyched. Dom, how's it going? This and that. What's up? We're drinking. We're watching the game. We're talking for an hour and a half. Talking about this, gambling, all the stuff, blah, blah, blah. And finally, he turns to me and goes, so what do you do? I was like, oh. Almost 2 hours. The guy had zero recollection of who I was. No memory of working with no anything. And I was just like, it hurt so bad.
That's so funny. Now, are you sure he wasn't busting your balls? Because he's good at that. Yeah. He's very subtle with it.
Yeah, then that was when I asked. Brad actually said that, he goes, "Oh no, I'm sorry, man. Of course." And because that's what I was thinking. Like, oh, you're just trying to embarrass me in front of my friends here and everything. No, unfortunately, it was 100% legit. It was, and I since told someone else the story, and they were like, "Yeah, he doesn't always remember." Like, I was like, "Oh man, I thought we were like buddies."
Oh, yeah. That's so funny.
Yeah,
but I know that's also heartbreaking as well. It's crushing to have that when you think you have something or like a relationship, and it's like, who? Wait, what? Who?
Exactly. It's like you thought you were dating, and it turns out he got married to someone else. You're like, oh, okay, all right. Thought we were in a relationship, but yeah, no, God love him, man, and he should. I wish he would do a book or do something, because he's the history of comedy. I mean, he knows everyone.
Yeah, he's been around for a long time, and I like that he pops through Philly often. I was actually one time a couple years ago. I was at dinner with my parents. It's just me, my mom, and my stepdad having dinner. And then Dom walks in with some of his cousins. And I was like, God damn it, I'm not even the most famous comic at happy hour on a Monday in the suburbs.
That's awesome.
And I remember I drove my parents back home, and I went back to the bar to hang out with Dom. And Dom and I just talked comedy all night at this just very average neighborhoody restaurant in Springfield, Pennsylvania. Just so random, but it fell on our laps, and it was just so cool.
That is so cool. That's the kind of stuff you never forget too. That's like when these icons are just like, oh, you're here with me in this random bar, and this,
we weren't in a club. We were both there with family, and then we ended up staying and then just talking shop for hours, and it was so cool.
That is cool, man. That's those are the nights that you remember. Better than the bad nights on stage.
Absolutely. All right, man. Well, thanks for doing this, dude. That's all I want to talk about, just the early days and what got you into it. And so happy you were a guest.
Oh, thanks for having me. I hope it was mildly entertaining.
Dude, absolutely. Anything you want to plug before we get out of here?
Now I got a new album that I released this year, right before the pandemic. It's called Best of Michael Somerville. It's on Spotify, SiriusXM, Apple Music, all that stuff. So please, even if you don't listen to it, just like follow it or download it or do whatever people do, so I could make an eighth of a cent.
Yeah, plus play and then leave the room or something.
Exactly. That's what I do every night.
Just get those numbers up. All right, man. Michael Somerville, thank you so much, dude. We'll be talking again soon, dude. Thank you.
Take care, man. Thanks.
You got it.
You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.